Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really delighted that so many came today. On behalf of the Management Center Innsbruck and our Alumni Association, MCI Alumni and Friends, I'm glad to welcome you to this event. A warm welcome to all students, alumni, friends, partners, colleagues, and today a warm welcome to all visitors of the MCI Open House. Building the best gear for the outdoors, supporting the preservation of wild places, and inspiring a global movement of outdoor exploration. This fundamental mission has remained unchanged since the beginning of the North Face success story. It's a great honor for me to present to you our guest today, the founder and former CEO of the North Face company. Please give a warm welcome to Kenneth Hap Klopp. Hap Klopp is accompanied by his lovely wife Margot. Also welcome to you, Margot. Today's event will be chaired by Peter Mirsky. He is head of the MCI department and studies Management, Communication and IT, and head of the IT Services and Learning Solution. Welcome to you, Peter. Now I will hand over to Peter, and I wish you all an interesting talk and discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this alumni event and to this, I would say, amazing speech, an amazing person who really traveled that far to be here with us today, and this is really, really outstanding. Thank you also for traveling and coming to Innsbruck. As the audience is quite diverse, I just want to highlight 2 or 3 aspects of your career, Hap, and then I would just hand over to you if that's okay for you. So the first thing, and Bettina already mentioned that, Hap is the one who started the North Face. And he ran that company for 20 years. So it's not only coming up with a wonderful idea and creating a strong innovation, but also running that business for 20 years. This is a second very, very important aspect in it. And the North Face got a lot of recognition for being one of the best managed companies in its field. So this is something which is also worth to mention. A huge field of expertise, and I think a huge field of good stories and things which we could learn from. This is the one aspect. The next aspect which I want to highlight is that Hap, I think in the 80s, then founded his consulting firm. And he was involved in more than 100 companies as a co-founder, initiator, mentor, CEO, member of the board of executives, being somebody who really shared his visions and was still working on innovations. That's what I found on the web. It's more or less seeking for new ideas and applying that ideas in a kind of consumer-orientated, business-orientated approach. Really, really outstanding. The third aspect brings us here to MCI. Hap always has been a lecturer at universities. Hap published books, wrote his thoughts in white papers, and shared his visions and tried to inspire young people and elder people like me, with his ideas and bringing them, enforcing them, empowering them to come up with new ideas and change things in our world. And these are the 3 aspects which I found really interesting. And I'm really looking forward, as we all do, to hear your speech, and then we will have the possibility to come up with questions. So be prepared.
Thank you, Peter.
The floor is all yours.
I thought I'd stand up here. It's a bit loud to me. Is it loud to everybody else? I thought I would stand so you could see me. I don't want to be the only person that you don't know and can't see. Basically, anybody from out of town is an expert. And the further away you come, the more expert you are. So I think it's that vein that MCI asked me to come here. My business style is basically to ask forgiveness, not to ask for permission. It is one of taking chances, taking risk, and being enthused about what the results can be. I believe that you need to get the facts straight first, then you can distort later, but you need to move ahead rapidly. Contrary to what you will read in the newspapers, the economy is slowly turning around. It is going to be the best potential 10 years of your life as you move forward. People who are paralyzed by what they read in the newspaper are going to suffer because there's great opportunities happening now. As I said, stop reading the newspapers, stop listening to what's going on. Naysayers will paralyze you. If Jesus were to walk on water today, the newspapers would report it, Jesus can't swim. That's not the way it is. My background is I've always been an entrepreneur. I think I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started when I was in grade school. I ran a school store. It was a way to get out of class. I liked that. It was a way for me to stop disrupting everybody else. The principal asked me if I would, one of my good friends and I would stand in front of his office and sell things and we would benefit the school. I did that. I was thinking I was being very clever. I didn't realize till later it was directly outside his office, and he had some place where he could watch me. But I enjoyed the commercial aspect of that, and I even at the same time when I was in grade school ran casino nights for my parents' friends. We would invite them over, my brother and I, and we would set up roulette wheels and card games and entertainment, and we would gamble. And I learned then that the house always wins, so that was something I did. But I went and got an MBA. I got my MBA from Stanford. I had run a family company. My father died when I was in college, and so I was trying to run a business in Spokane, Washington, which was about 900 miles away from Stanford. I'd go back and forth trying to run it. I didn't know anything about business. I had what we called then an NC2A look, no clue at all. But you know, I had this idea that I could run a business, and we developed it. I concluded that our wood products business didn't have what it took to survive. So I basically sold the company, but it took almost a year and a half. While I was an MBA, I was negotiating it, and I ended up selling that company and getting my MBA. And I certainly learned something about small business, and that is it's like law and sausages. You don't want to see what goes into it. You only want to see the output. At the end of getting my MBA, I expected people wanting me to run something because I was such a strategic wizard or something, but nobody offered me that job. I told some students earlier about an interview I had with Procter & Gamble, but I went around and talked with a number of companies because nobody was offering me a job. One of those companies, my wife worked for, General Mills. I went back and visited them. They gave me this interview, typical 8-hour interview. Procter & Gamble used it as well, and they have you talk with people an hour each, and at the end they summarize and decide if they're going to offer you a job. Well, I knew I was a bit of a fraud because I didn't like it, but I thought maybe that would be the only job I'd get. Well, when I was finished at General Mills with all these interviews, the first person asked me, said, "Hap, what do you think they said about you?" And I said, well, I would think they said, hire him, but don't put him in my division. And he said, well, you know, that's about right. And he said, but, you know, that indicates you'd be a good candidate for here. And I said, I don't think I want to do that. I don't want to put my fate in somebody else's hands. And he said, well, you know, you have a lot to learn. You should bloody your nose a lot. If you come back here, we'll make sure that you get the, you know, the right mentor. But I didn't think I fit. I knew from that interview, from an interview I had with other large companies, that I had to start something of my own. I couldn't work for anybody else. I was too opinionated and too much of an individual. And so that led to founding a company which was very small, as many companies are. We had 14 employees when we started, but it was the North Face. I started around something that I knew something about, which was the outdoors, and figured that if I knew what made a good product, that would be sufficient to start the business. And given the fact that I had run some businesses and that I had had an MBA, I had some training on strategic thinking, which most entrepreneurs don't. As an entrepreneur, basically there are four things that I believe that you had to have and that I had. One was a goal, the second one was to have a vision, the third one was to have a strategy, and the fourth one, having sort of an unhealthy sense of urgency and of self-worth, a belief in myself and my business. I mean, our goal, my goal when I started the North Face was to influence business history, instead of merely just making or observing, to make something that was really great, a better product than anybody had ever made, a better company than anybody had ever made. My vision was doing this via making a brand, making a singular brand that told that same message, because I knew it would be too expensive from a marketing standpoint. So we needed to synthesize it. We needed to condense it. And we had a strategy. And that strategy basically was applying technology to a commoditized field. I'll come back to that later. I call that turning the arrow back. And as I said, this unhealthy sense of urgency, I believe that do nothing, nothing happens, that time's a great teacher, but it kills all its pupils.
Thank you so much, Hap. I think it was more than worth just wait some seconds and let it settle down.
Okay,
there were so many tips in it for our lives and also our young students and all the others for sure too. One point which I wanted to highlight and just briefly discuss with you before we hand over the microphones to the audience is that when we were talking before we just entered this room, we talked about kind of the DNA of the Silicon Valley.
Yes.
And in the Silicon Valley, what I've learned, there's something like what people say, fail often and fail early.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something which is only true for a seminar, or can you really have that in a company? Can you have that in action? Is that a good concept?
It's a fantastic concept. As we talked about, there's a line of thinking called, in terms of decision analysis and how you define things, David Kelly, Asno Plattner, and the idea is to rapid prototype, find a lot of things, basically supplying or providing things like the scientific method to business. Mm-hmm. Instead of going out and trying to anticipate and study everything and put study groups together and plan, you have to go out and try. And you try and those things will fail. But as Thomas Edison said, I didn't fail, I just found 10,000 ways that things won't work. And that's really what you need to do. And that's the way of thinking. That's what's happening in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has really benefited because it has a lot of immigrants. It doesn't have a lot of the social ties or the social restrictions that exist out there. First of all, by coming thousands of miles to live or work in Silicon Valley, they've already taken a risk. So you're predisposed to that. And they're predisposed to rapid innovation or introduction of product and testing that. And in today's world, you don't have time for everything to play out. Patents are 17 years in length. But that is ridiculous. There's very few products that ever last 17 years. They'll last 3 or 4 years. Sometimes it's better not even to totally patent, just to go quiet on your process, because when you patent and it finally comes out, the information is out there, and now you're at risk. So it is, I would say, it is the strategy. I say it's a secret sauce of Silicon Valley. The ability to embrace failure and the fact to recognize that it's beneficial, it is not a blemish.